London, 1888. The most powerful city on earth. The heart of the greatest empire the world had ever seen. And yet, beneath the grandeur, beneath the wealth, there were streets so dark, so desperate, so forgotten, that a killer could walk them freely, night after night, and nobody could stop him. 5 women, 12 weeks, 0 answers. More than 130 years later, we still don't know who he was. Is the story of Jack the Ripper, and the truth is darker than you think. Welcome to the Void of History. To understand Jack the Ripper, you first have to understand Whitechapel. In 1888, London's East End was a world apart from the grand boulevards and palatial mansions of the city's wealthy districts. Whitechapel was overcrowded, desperate, dangerous. The district was notorious for squalor, violence, and crime. Thousands of brothels and low-rent lodging houses crowded its narrow streets. Immigrants flooded in from across Europe, Jews fleeing persecution, Irish families escaping poverty, Eastern Europeans desperate for any work they could find. They all ended up here, in the fog, in the dark. And for the women of Whitechapel, survival often meant selling the only thing they had left, themselves on dark streets, in the fog, every single night. At that time, the death or murder of a working girl was rarely reported in the press or discussed within polite society. These women were invisible to the world. Until the autumn of 1888, when someone decided to make them impossible to ignore. The killing began on the 31st of August 1888. Her name was Mary Ann Nichols. Found in the early hours of the morning, lying in the gateway of a stable yard on Bucks Row. Her throat had been cut, twice, so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. The police constable who found her first thought she was drunk, until the lantern light caught the blood. Mary Ann Nichols was 43 years old. She had 5 children. She had been trying to earn 4 pence, the price of a bed for the night at a local lodging house. She never made it home. 8 days later, Annie Chapman, found in the backyard of a house on Hanbury Street. It was with Annie Chapman's murder that the unease that had been bubbling away in the area gave way to outright panic. The East End was terrified. Women refused to walk alone at night. Men formed vigilante patrols. The newspapers ran the story every single day. And still, nobody knew who he was, or when he would strike again. Then came the night that broke London. September the 30th, 1888. The killer returned to the streets of the East End and claimed the lives of 2 victims within 1 single hour of each other. The press would call it the night of the double event. The first victim was Elizabeth Stride, found at 1 o'clock in the morning in Dutfield's yard off Burner Street. Her throat had been cut, but nothing else. No mutilation. Most experts believe the reason Stride had not been mutilated like the others was that the killer feared he was in jeopardy of being detected by nearby witnesses and elected to flee before finishing his ritual. Someone had interrupted him. He slipped back into the fog. And 45 minutes later, he struck again. Catherine Eddowes, found in Mitre Square. Her throat had been cut and she had been disemboweled. The killer had targeted her face, carving deep cuts into her cheeks and eyelids. He had also removed her uterus and left kidney, and taken them with him into the night. 2 women. 1 night. Less than 1 mile apart. Less than 1 hour between them. The city of London erupted. Scotland Yard was humiliated. The press was merciless. And the killer sent them a letter. Hundreds of letters arrived at Scotland Yard and the London newspapers claiming to be from the killer. Most were dismissed as hoaxes, but 3 were taken seriously. The first, the Dear Boss letter, dated September 25, 1888. It read in part, "I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled." It was signed, Jack the Ripper. The name spread across every newspaper in London overnight. Jack the Ripper. It was the name that would haunt history forever. But the letter that truly chilled Scotland Yard was the one that arrived on October the 16th. Sent to George Lusk, head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee. Inside the package was half a human kidney, preserved in wine. The letter read simply, "From hell." A doctor who examined the kidney confirmed it was human, female, and had been removed with surgical precision. The other half was never found. Scotland Yard had no leads, no suspects, no answers, and London had never been more afraid. On the morning of November the 9th, 1888, a rent collector knocked on the door of room 13 Miller's Court. He received no answer. He looked through a broken window pane, and what he saw ended the Autumn of Terror. Her name was Mary Jane Kelly. She was 25 years old. She had been born in Limerick, Ireland. Her father's name was John Kelly. She had 6 brothers and a sister. Her husband had been killed in a mine explosion, and she had come to London looking for a better life. She was the youngest of his victims, and she was the last. Unlike the others who were killed on the street, Mary Kelly was murdered inside her own room. The killer had taken his time. For the first and only time, he had privacy. The details of what was found in that room are beyond what any words should describe. What matters is this: after Mary Kelly, Jack the Ripper was never heard from again. No more bodies, no more letters, no more fog-soaked crime scenes at dawn. He simply vanished, as if he had never existed at all. Since 1888, more than 100 suspects have been named in the Jack the Ripper case. But 3 names have always stood above the rest. The first, Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant living in Whitechapel, known to have had a deep hatred of women. Hospitalized in an asylum just months after the final murder. In 2014, author and amateur sleuth Russell Edwards claimed to have determined the identity of Jack the Ripper through DNA results obtained from a shawl belonging to victim Catherine Eddowes. Edwards asserted the evidence pointed directly to Aaron Kosminski, but the DNA evidence was contested, and the case was never closed. The second, Montague John Druitt, a barrister and teacher. He had a surgical interest and was said to be insane. He disappeared after the final murders and was later found dead, drowned in the Thames. Was it guilt? Or simply a coincidence? Nobody knows. The third suspect was the most shocking of all. Prince Albert Victor, the grandson of Queen Victoria herself. The theory suggested a royal cover-up, that Scotland Yard knew the truth and buried it forever. Whether you believe a Polish immigrant, a drowning barrister, or a royal conspiracy, the answer is the same. Nobody was ever charged. Nobody was ever convicted. Jack the Ripper got away with it completely. Here is what the history books don't always tell you. Jack the Ripper was not just a killer. He was a mirror. He showed Victorian society something it desperately wanted to hide. That beneath the wealth and the empire and the grandeur, there were streets where women had nothing, where survival meant risking everything. Every single night, Jack the Ripper didn't just end lives. His crimes seemed to portray an abhorrence for the entire female gender. And they forced a city that had ignored these women in life to finally see them in death. Marion Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Mary Jane Kelly. 5 women, not statistics, not footnotes in a killer's legend. Women who had names, and children, and stories, and lives that deserved far better than what the autumn of 1888 gave them. Jack the Ripper was never caught, but he left something behind. A question that has haunted criminology, history, and human nature for over a century. What kind of darkness lives inside a person that allows them to do this? We don't know who Jack the Ripper was, but perhaps the more important question is, why did the world let him hunt for so long, before anyone decided to look? 5 victims, 12 weeks, more than 130 years, and still no answer. Jack the Ripper remains the world's most famous unsolved case. Not because the crimes were the worst in history, but because the darkness he disappeared into is the same darkness that still exists today, somewhere, in every city, in every fog. This story stayed with you. You already know what the Void of History is about. Subscribe, because the next story is waiting, and I'll see you in the Void.